Well, we did it, I think. Let me know if you can't hear me. This is Bryan, Director of Skincare Research from Paula's Choice Skincare, here for this week's live chat. A bit behind schedule, I apologize. We were having audio issues, as I did post about that if you noticed it. So, yay! Can y'all hear me? I'll just keep chatting. It looks like it. Yeah, this looks like the audio is going through. Finally, I troubleshooting, and then we finally got down to that whole, like, when you just can't figure out why it's not working, and you didn't change anything, and you're just like, all right, screw it, we're gonna close the whole thing down and start all over, and that's what we did, and it worked. So here I am. So it is Thursday, August 8th. Let's see. Not. I'm having a bit of a weird skin day, because I used our azelaic acid booster last night, which I use every so often, a few times a week at night, and then I put it over the Resist Daily Smoothing Treatment, which has 5% AHA and about 0.5% salicylic acid, and I put one of our newer products on top of it that I can't tell you about just yet. But it's not an exfoliant. And my skin is a little, like, extra sensitive this morning, and I don't think it was the new product at all. If anything, that would have helped offset it. But I think it was a combination of the alpha hydroxy acid and the 10% azelaic acid that didn't agree with me. And normally, if I do my exfoliant step and azelaic acid on the same night, I would put the Calm 1% BHA lotion on, followed by the azelaic acid booster, which also has 0.5% salicylic acid. So, I don't know, kind of weird, and it could just be a seasonal thing, because, that happens. But, yeah, my skin it's not like dehydrated or flaky looking, it just feels a little extra sensitive today. So, anyway, let's dive in and get your questions going. I'll go a little longer, because you've all been waiting. I mean, as long as there's still questions to answer. So, Fire Earth. Oh, hi, Brian. I would love it. I do have my bubblies just in the background. I would love it if you could help me find out the perfect exfoliant for my skin. I have the BHA liquid from the Skin Perfecting line, and I love it for the results it provides, but it is too drying for the dry parts of my combo skin, and it is a little bit too strong for me to use it daily. And I also have the Skin Perfecting 2% BHA lotion, but it is not enough for my enlarged and clogged pores. This is a multi-part question. What would be a good alternative for me? I'm also prone to visible capillaries, a mess. Well, I wouldn't call that a mess. Let's not be so hard on ourselves. But I think I have the same experience with the Skin Perfecting 2% BHA liquid. So we're a handful of people that can't use that product very often. It is our global bestseller, not disparaging it, just not everything works for everyone. So what I found, though, works brilliantly and still lets me get that 2% BHA is the Resist Pore Refining 2% BHA treatment. And that is in our Resist Anti-Aging line, light blue. So in comparison to the Skin Perfecting BHAs, the ones that we have in our Resist Light Blue line are chock full of anti-aging ingredients, along with the 2% salicylic acid, because that particular collection is for someone who is getting on in years, as we all are, and is dealing with not only fine lines and wrinkles, loss of firmness, skin tone issues, but also clogged pores, enlarged pores, and even some breakouts, potentially for the first time. And it is, I don't think we promote the fact as often as we could that our Resist Light Blue line for normal to oily skin is a really interesting, very targeted collection for that group of people that want to use anti-aging, but they still have issues that tend to be associated with younger skin, in terms of the breakouts and the pores and the oiliness. The conventional wisdom is that as we age, our pores should get smaller, our skin should get drier, particularly if you're female, and when you go through the menopausal years, there's that whole euphemism of mature skin, and as soon as your skin becomes mature, which is always at some arbitrary age, like it's not mature at 49, but it is at 50, I don't know who thought that up. But the physiologic truth is that male or female, our skin changes in different ways as we age. And specific to women who are dealing with the various stages of menopause, just being in menopause at any stage doesn't automatically mean your skin is going to become dry as the Sahara Desert. You could go in the opposite direction as your estrogen falls and your testosterone, which women have, just like men have estrogen, it's just that the ratios are flipped. Very simplistic statement there, but you get the point. That could result in your skin becoming oily, clog prone, and large pores as you are in your 40s and early 50s. So you go to the cosmetic counter, for example, and you ask for anti-aging and you ask for products for mature skin, and they're almost always going to offer you thick balms and creams and heavier products because the general assumption in the industry is that mature skin, or menopausal skin for that matter, is dry skin, and that's not always the case. So I think that Resist daily pore refining treatment, which is a liquid like the 2% BHA liquid you've been using, but it's even lighter. Try that and see what you think. And it's got a nice mix of anti-inflammatory ingredients in it too that may actually help with some visible improvement of those capillaries. Okay, scrolling down here, Roel says, "Hey Bryan, I have a product that has 22% zinc in it, 22% zinc, so presumably zinc oxide, the sunscreen, in a not so elegant base. My favorite Coola SPF contains only 1.2% zinc and 3.8% titanium dioxide in a silicone base. Does a higher percentage of zinc mean better UVA protection? Both products are SPF 30. I love this question. It doesn't necessarily mean better protection as long as if you were looking at two products that have the same SPF rating, at least especially those sold in the United States where sunscreen is regulated as an over-the-counter drug, if it has that SPF on the label, it has gone through the FDA mandated testing to determine not only its SPF value, but hopefully it's gone through what's called the critical wavelength test, which is a measure of UVA protection. And if the product passes that test, which is separate from the SPF test, then it can put broad spectrum on the label. So just for the audience out there, if your current sunscreen does not state broad spectrum, especially if it is a newer product you bought, I would consider trying something else, because you can have that SPF 30, 50, 200, well, not 200, but you can get, 60, 70, and not get broad spectrum because it failed the critical wavelength test. And you do not want that, because that puts your skin at increased risk for the entire, well, how should I put this? Put your skin at increased risk for UVA damage, because there is a spectrum of, there's a portion of the UVA light spectrum, that's what I'm trying to say, that isn't getting filtered as well as it could be, unless it has that broad spectrum label. So it can be tricky, because when you're looking at lower levels of mineral actives, 1.2% zinc, 3.8% titanium dioxide, so we're looking at about, 5% total active ingredients, and then you have another product that's got a whopping 22% zinc oxide. So both products are SPF 30. It's certainly possible that the SPF testing for the product with 22% zinc oxide revealed that it has a much higher SPF rating. Maybe it's SPF 55 or 32, not 32, 55 or even 60. But for whatever reason, the brand opted. They're like, we want this to be SPF 30. SPF 30 is what people are looking for. Especially with mineral actives, there is a perception among some consumers that the higher the SPF, the less elegant the product with mineral actives is going to feel. And aesthetically, that is often true. The higher you go on the mineral percentage side, it's just, you can, when you've got 22% zinc oxide, that means you only have room for 78% of what else you need to make the formula. And some of it has to be water, and some of it has to be preservatives and emulsifiers. And in contrast, The other sunscreen with the lower amount of mineral actives may have just squeaked by at SPF 30. Maybe it got like a 30.7 or a 31. I'm speculating. I don't have any insider information here. But the point is, there are other, as long as it passed that SPF testing, you can rely on that. Having said that, there's two other things worth mentioning. One is personal preference, and that is, would be my personal preference. I would go for the product that had the higher amount of mineral actives, just in case. I am sunburn prone, I'm more freckle prone. I would just want, psychologically, I'd want that extra protection. So even though they both had the same SPF, if it were me in the store, I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna go for the higher amount of actives. I just think my skin will do better that way. And maybe I won't have to apply as much, but I, of course, would still reapply as needed. The other thing that chemists can do when it is a big goal in sunscreen chemistry to use a lower load of active ingredients so that you can improve the aesthetics of the product, which is a wonderful thing to do, because if you find a sunscreen that feels good and you love having it on and it just applies easily, then you'll keep using it. It's like finding a flavor of toothpaste or type of coffee that you like. You're more likely to drink that cup of coffee and use that toothpaste, brush your teeth every day if you like how they work and how they taste. Very important with sunscreen to get those aesthetics right, but when you have to use a higher load of actives to get to your desired SPF rating, that can, as I mentioned a moment ago, severely affect the aesthetics. There are workarounds, though, from a chemistry standpoint of using different types of SPF boosters, wherein that allows you to use a lower load of actives to get the same desired SPF, but you basically make the SPF ingredients work better, work harder, so that you don't have to use as much of them to get the same result. So it's possible, and I'll bet very probable, that that is what is at play with this other sunscreen that has a sum total of 5% mineral actives. Okay, probably way more than you wanted to know, but I can geek out over this stuff. Andrea says, hello, Bryan. What are your thoughts on retinaldehyde? Can it be more potent than retinol since it's just one conversion away from retinoic acid? Yes, it can. It's retinol needs to break down into all trans-retinoic acid in the skin in order to have the effect you want it to. And there is a conversion that happens within the skin as the retinol penetrates that allows that to happen. And there's different schools of thought that it's not the retinol per se, but the conversion process it undergoes in skin that causes some people to have what's called retinol dermatitis, which is that kickback from irritation some people get when they start using retinol, or when they use retinol in a concentration that is too much for their skin. And I think in a lot of cases, because chances are if you're using retinol, you're using other bioactive ingredients too. You're not just saying, nope, retinol is all the anti-aging I want, stops there. Because retinol is wonderful, but it can't do it all. So what I think happens as well when some people experience irritation from retinol is that it's the compounding factor of the retinol and the other bioactive ingredients all being applied at the same time. And unfortunately, I wish there was a way to say, here's who it will happen to and here's who it won't happen to. But I've not seen any, from the research and from just my personal experience of talking with people over the years, I've not seen any consistency. It's like, oh, you've got fair skin and are this age and have this skin type, so it's more likely to happen to you. I've talked to a lot of people over the years who've used retinol in all strengths, and they self-identify as having sensitive or reactive skin. Tolerate retinol just fine. Then I've talked with women who have, they're like, oh, I've got hardy skin, it's oily, it can take anything. And they'll use a 0.1% retinol and it throws their skin into a tailspin. So there's just no pattern there. It really comes down to experimentation. And retinaldehyde is certainly an option. It does have one less conversion step to get to retinoic acid. So There is far more research. If you're a newbie to this, there's far more research attesting to what retinol does for the skin and how it works, and there are receptor sites for retinol, within skin, and on and on and on. We don't have the same volume of research for retinaldehyde. It is considered third or fourth generation retinoid, along with the retinol retinoate would be another one, and then the hydroxypenocolone retinoate, which some brands use. The Ordinary uses that. It's a it's a retinoid developed by a company called Grant Industries, who do a lot of cool things. Shout out to Grant. But yeah, my advice if you're new to retinol is just start with retinol and see how your skin does. Start with the original, and then if once you've established how your skin responds to it and you want to keep using it, you can start experimenting with a retinaldehyde product if so desired, and see if you notice any difference. I suspect that if you are someone whose skin tolerates retinol without any issue, whether it's low strength or high strength, you don't necessarily need to switch to retinaldehyde. There's not, in terms of comparative, I suppose you could argue that because of the one less step in the conversion process, that it reaches its target and can work faster. But I've not seen anything that quantifies how much faster. And even if we figure that out, like, oh, it's retinol that takes 20 hours and retinaldehyde it takes 16 hours or 12 hours, what does that really mean even? In terms of the visible benefit that you'll see short and long term. So anyway, there you go. Give it a go. I don't have a negative opinion on retinaldehyde at all. The only thing that gets to me is when brands touting it, and this obviously isn't about all brands touting it, but when they make it out to be so superior to retinol, and the research just isn't there to support that. It is another retinoid to consider. End of story. I mean, there's not a whole lot more to say to it than that. Little Miss Chatterbox says, "Hi Brian, I use the peptide booster at night. It pills with my AM routine. Paula had that same issue, and she found that if she used a bit less and gave it about 30 seconds to set, that the problem went away. Just something to try. I also use tretinoin in a cream base, which is thicker. If I put the peptide booster on first, will my tretinoin get through? Yes, no question. Yeah. First of all, you're putting a heavier product in terms of texture on top of a lighter product, which is the best way to layer. You don't want to apply your thick cream and then put a bunch of liquids and gels over that. It isn't that the ingredients wouldn't eventually get to where they need to go, but they would certainly have a more difficult time doing so. The peptide booster has so many ingredients in it that have a natural affinity for skin. And one of the things that the amino acids in it do is they help to keep the water pathways, technically known as aquaporins, in skin functioning normally. And those water pathways in skin are almost like little highways, little roads on the map of our face. Of course, you don't see them on the surface; they're beneath the surface. But as smaller ingredients like amino acids and peptides penetrate, they basically merge into these pathways, and then the amino acids can basically say, we're air traffic control. We can help direct the flow of things going through these pathways to help ingredients get to where they need to be. So if anything, in my speculation would be that putting the peptide booster on first will actually help deliver the tretinoin into the skin in a more efficient manner. So I think that's a great thing. Elena says, Brian, you mentioned in the previous chat that if you put sunscreen under products without sunscreen, then the protection is compromised. Is it true when I put my foundation on top of mineral sunscreen? So this is another very good question, and I get why there's some confusion there. And the short answer is no, because makeup products like foundation are designed to stay on the surface of skin. If the makeup product, like a foundation, penetrated the way skincare products are formulated to do, and let me just, as a quick aside, say that not every skincare ingredient in a product penetrates into skin as far as like penetrates and it's gone. It's going to work in the lower layers of skin. There are some ingredients that can go further into skin. There's some ingredients that stay above that. And then there's some ingredients like sunscreen actives that are designed primarily to stay on skin surface where they are needed, for first line of defense. Same thing with some antioxidants. You don't want to push all those antioxidants as far as possible into skin, not because some of them don't need to be there and that they can't help down there, but if all of the antioxidants in your products went as far into skin as possible, what's left on the surface to protect? I mean, this is your first line of defense from blue light, from UV light, from airborne pollutants, from everything your skin is exposed to, what's called exposome factors throughout your life. You need some of those antioxidants on the surface. So the other thing about makeup, particularly foundation, is that almost all foundations, whether it's liquid powder, cream to powder, stick, sprays even, if you like that makeup mist type, some brands like Dior, I think, still sells, I guess you'd call it foundation in a can. They contain iron oxides to create often titanium dioxide, particularly if you have a lighter skin tone, but even some of the shades for darker skin tones, like what the beautiful range that Fenty Beauty did, Rihanna's line. Titanium dioxide is in many types of foundations, not only to create the color, like for someone really white like me, but also even if you are a woman of color, a man of color, and you're wearing a darker shade, the titanium dioxide also serves as an opacifying agent, contributing to the foundation's ability to cover. So, interestingly, there was some research that if you have brown skin discolorations or a discoloration issue known as melasma, where you have a more diffuse, almost like a mask-like discoloration that's usually around the perimeter of the face. It can occur during pregnancy. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned that in the past. That iron oxides, which are in many different types of makeups, they're used as a pigment, but iron oxides also can block some amount of UV light and visible light, which would be where the blue light falls on the light spectrum. Blue light, environmental blue light, and then blue light from our digital devices that most of us can't live without. What the study showed is that in women with melasma, there was one group that was given a sunscreen that was tinted with iron oxides, and it was a mineral sunscreen, and then the other group used the mineral sunscreen that didn't have the tint. And the melasma group who used the tinted product, I think, had a 18% improvement in their melasma over the period of the study, which was likely 4 weeks. It could have been longer than that. But the point is, you've got two groups of people with the same skin concern. They used the exact same sunscreen, except one group got the sunscreen with the iron oxides, and they elucidated in the study that the iron oxides' impact on screening through the visible light spectrum is likely what caused the melasma to retreat, because there's some theory that it's not just UV light that drives melasma and keeps it hanging around, but there's also a portion of visible light that is what is it called, a confounding factor in that. Cool, huh? So if you are struggling with melasma and you're using skin lightening products and your favorite sunscreen doesn't have a tint, I would strongly consider putting a foundation, even a sheer one, over that for some extra help and just see what happens. Okay. All right, let's move on to Anka. She says, what would be the best diet approach to prevent aging from the inside? Any tips on what foods we should pay special attention to? Also, could you please share with us what you eat on a typical day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Oh, goodness. Okay, so let me start this answer by saying you can't prevent aging from the inside, period. I mean, there's some amount of aging that's going to happen no matter what you do, no matter how healthy you are. It's just a fact of life. There's chronological aging, as far as our cells have a pre-programmed set of time they're going to continue to divide, and as that process slows and stops, all the wild caught organic salmon and produce in the world isn't going to reverse that. So I don't want that to be discouraging, because there's absolutely research, a lot of research, that a diet, particularly an anti-inflammatory diet, can make a tremendous difference in how your body ages from the inside. And that can manifest in terms of like not only how you look, but how you feel in terms of as we age. And it's almost like become a stereotype that you get to a certain age and you get up from your chair and you find yourself moaning and creaking a little bit more, and you don't even think about it. It's just like, oh, and you didn't do that 10 years ago, or you didn't do that when you were a teenager. You get up from a chair and be like, whoo, let's go. Anyway, what to eat. The general rule that there isn't one particular diet that's considered best, but the Mediterranean diet probably comes up the most often in terms of an example of the types of foods. Healthy fats, polyunsaturated, unsaturated fats, minimal saturated fat, such as that you get from like full-fat dairy products and beef. A lot of animal foods have eggs, saturated fat. Those are the types of foods that you should look to eat more in moderation. Paula's a little bit more strict about it in terms of her personal approach. I don't necessarily think saturated fat is the villain that it's often made out to be, and there's quite a bit of research that supports that statement. I think where we get in trouble with saturated fat is that saturated fat is woven into so many highly processed foods that are composed of simple sugars, or what's also known as simple carbohydrates. So your cupcakes, your any type of pastry or baked good or cookie, breads that are made with a lot of refined flour as opposed to whole grains. So generally, the Mediterranean diet also includes a lot of seeds, nuts, as good sources of healthy fats, fish, vegetables and fruit, of course, red wine in moderation. I don't know, you often, you hear about the health benefits of red wine, and you just have to keep in mind that it's a fine line. I mean, there's what is healthy in red wine can very quickly become unhealthy if you drink it too much or too often. And I love my wine, just like the next person that loves their wine. But yeah, I keep those recommendations in mind. And honestly, one of the things that's helped is, just as a quick personal aside, since you asked about my diet, is buying more expensive wine. And what I find with the more expensive wines is that I don't pour as much, and I tend to savor it more, as opposed to, the wines that are like under $10 a bottle, say. That it's not that there aren't good wines under $10 a bottle, but they go down faster. I don't know, maybe your experience is different, but I found that when I drink a more expensive wine, I tend to savor the experience more, and I drink less of it, and that works really well for me. So in terms of what else I eat, I'll just run down this really quickly. It's like an average diet, average day. I'm a big breakfast eater. I'm one of those people that I get hangry, as they say, in the morning if I don't have something to eat within like half an hour of waking up. I have some coffee with natural creamer. Natural meaning like I don't buy the candy-coated, artificially flavored stuff. It does have a little bit of sweetener in it. I do like a little bit of sweetener in my coffee. I don't add any other sugar. Breakfast is usually a bowl of like shredded wheat type cereal with grass milk, or another similar like high fiber whole grain cereal. Sometimes oatmeal with fresh fruit, usually blueberries or raspberries, depending on what's in the house. 2-3 times a week, I will have eggs. Usually scrambled with like a couple pieces of chicken sausage, and or sometimes like whole peeled potatoes if I'm in more of a potato mood. I do love potatoes. I know they're not the best food to eat a lot, but I'm a Midwestern guy. Potatoes are just like a staple. I don't think I could ever give up potatoes completely. Although I am really good about not doing French fries unless it's a special treat and I know that the restaurant has like really, really good fries, you know, like those truffle fries with the garlic on it or something, and then it's a special treat. Lunch is typically I have a glass of kefir, which is like fermented milk or fermented drinkable yogurt is another way to look at it. I usually have a lean turkey sandwich with the standard condiments, and I'll put some greens on it. We always have like a thing of greens in the house. Well, I need to get better about eating those more often, so I always look for ways that I can work them in to my diet. And then I might have like some cottage cheese. I try to keep it leaner. I try to get around 30 grams of protein one way or another with every meal for my gender, for my weight, to maintain muscle mass, because as men age, they do start losing muscle mass into their 40s. And I want to preserve what I have as long as I can and build more. And then dinner is usually, if we're cooking at home, it's usually chicken or fish. We'll often do a big salad where we'll like cook up some protein, like maybe we'll do a taco salad with a few different types of beans, some avocado, fresh romaine lettuce, and take some ground chicken or really, really lean ground beef. Whenever I do buy ground beef, I try to get grass-fed ground beef just because if I'm going to get the saturated fat from the red meat, I want to make sure that I'm also getting what's called CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid. That's one of the healthier fats that is found in grass-fed beef, but not conventional grain-fed beef. And sometimes we'll have buffalo. I like buffalo meat. It is more expensive, so we don't get it a lot, but I'd say maybe once or twice a month. We'll do like a buffalo meatloaf. And I always just try to look for shortcuts, not only shortcuts in cooking as far as getting a meal on the table faster, but ways that I can weave more nutrition into recipes without like taking something and making it like a major calorie bomb. I don't have a huge sweet tooth. If we're not really big dessert people. I can have a half gallon of ice cream in the house in the freezer for months. Like I've had to throw it away because it's just gotten so freezer burned. If I do have anything sweet, it's almost always chocolate. I love good chocolate, and like for example, if I'm having another glass of red wine after dinner, I will often have a piece, just a square of 70% pure cacao dark chocolate with that wine. And every so now I'll get like a dark chocolate sea salt caramel, the really, really small ones, because I'm one of those anomalies with those types of things where I can have that little piece, like I can have a Hershey Kiss size piece of chocolate and be good. I don't immediately go back to the bag and just start gorging myself. For some reason, that's something I have self-control over. Believe me, there's other things in my life, not so much. So it's by no means me being superior. How are we doing on time? Okay, well, like I said, we're going to go a little longer today because we started late. Meti says, hi from Denmark. When I use very high strength vitamin C product, 10 to 20% L-ascorbic esters with without vitamin E, I get more clogged pores than usual, even when combined with 2% BHA. I wonder why. It could be, vitamin C and vitamin E and any amount, like pure vitamin E, like what you might squeeze out of a capsule, like a vitamin supplement, and put on your skin. I suppose there's some potential for that to be comedogenic because it's an oil. It's a fat-soluble oil. But vitamin C, no. And I doubt that any of the vitamin C products that you've tried have that enough vitamin E to really be a problem. So what could be happening is that the base ingredients that the product is in are what's doing it, not the bioactive ingredients. And the solution is to experiment with different textures of products. I don't know if you've tried a really lightweight high-strength C product like our C15, which is a nice, it's a liquid, it's got a little bit of slip to it. It's not like as thin as pure water, but fairly close. And I would be shocked if somebody had true clogged pores and acne from that product. If you did break out, it would be what would be called an irritant contact dermatitis, and sometimes that can look like a little crop of acne bumps or clogged pores. You know that's what you're dealing with generally because the bumps typically don't respond well at all, or if at all, to anti-acne products. But they will respond. You have to stop using the product you suspect caused the problem, and then maybe start putting on a little hydrocortisone short term. I know there's a lot of you out there that are worried that any use of hydrocortisone is going to thin your skin and cause all signs or all sorts of catastrophic problems. It won't. Just don't use it all the time. For short-term use, it's fine. Tiffany says, "Hi Brian, does applying oils to skin break down fake tan? I ask because some fake tan companies offer oil-free moisturizers. Any tips in maintaining an even tan? Thanks." No, I don't think so. I think I don't see how that would be possible. If anything, using heavier oils on skin, at least in theory, could keep the dead skin cells that the self-tanning ingredient acts on, hanging around a little longer. They're not going to shed quite as quickly. That's just kind of a theoretical guess. I don't think the difference would be that big. So I don't think you have anything to worry about in terms of oils and making your self-tan last not as long as you'd like. The dihydroxyacetone ingredient, also known as DHA, it works in the uppermost layers of skin and it only impacts the dead cells. So that's why some people have seen research showing that DHA causes skin problems, and it can cause free radical damage in the lower layers of skin, but when you're looking at what's happening to the dead cells, I wouldn't be too concerned. Those cells are right on the surface and they're poised to come off soon. Even if it did cause some free radical damage in that sense, it's that those skin cells are being replaced. Having said that, that is likely why the rate at which your skin cells are renewing themselves may be a bit faster than some other people, particularly if you and like your mother or your girlfriend are using the same self-tanner and hers lasts for 3 days and yours lasts for a day. Could be that your skin cell turnover rate's just a little bit higher, and so as those dead cells shed, they take the color with them. And then what replaces it hasn't been exposed to the DHA, so you're going to see a lighter color. You may need to apply your self-tanner more often. You could look at trying a self-tanning product that has a higher concentration of DHA. Typically, some companies I've seen will call out that percentage. They don't have to. It works in many different strengths. Typically, it's used up to about 20%, but often a lot less than that. So what you might want to do is look for a self-tanning product that has a word in its name like dark, or it says it's specifically for medium to deep skin tones, and maybe you have a lighter skin tone, so you'd be inclined to look for the self-tanner that says for light to medium skin tones, but go for the ones that say for dark skin tones, because it's not that there's something special in them that only dark skin needs and light skin doesn't, or vice versa. It's all about how much of the DHA is in the product, and you may need a little bit more to get a stronger initial color because it fades so quickly. The other thing that can cause self-tanner to fade, and I wish this wasn't true, is AHA or BHA exfoliants, because they're encouraging that faster dead cell turnover rate to give you fresh, healthy, smooth, younger looking skin, bump-free skin, all that good stuff. But again, as they prompt those cells to shed the way they normally would, they're taking some of that color with it. Tobias says, hi, Bryan. I'm new to PC products, but I binge watched all the live chats this week. Oh, bless your heart. Wow. And wanted to say a huge thank you to the entire PC team for the incredible results and info I'm getting from you. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you, Tobias. You really make a difference in the world of skincare as well as real people's lives. Oh, thank you a lot, and look forward to continuing being your customer and live chat audience. Well, that just made my day. And you didn't even ask a question. Well, we're here for you. So, and not, I'm here for the live chats, but our client services team, honest, they're, I almost said honest engine, if you can believe that. They're a world-class team. They're so good, and they're patient, and they understand the products. So I encourage you to reach out to the client services team. They're available much longer than the hour that I spend each week with you. So phone, chat, email. Okay, let's take a few more questions here. Alex says, hola, Bryan. I'd like to know whether collagen supplements are worth it. Will PC make other types of supplements? I just bought the new one, HA plus ceramides. It'll arrive next week. So, Alex, we're looking at some other options for supplements. Nothing definitive yet. We're kind of curious to see how our customers are going to respond to this initial one, which is really more the mix of ingredients in that supplement is really more all-purpose. I mean, it's like everybody needs those great ingredients. In terms of collagen, it's I don't know. I don't know. It's on the table, and I just started taking a collagen supplement last weekend. I bought one that contains a type of collagen that I've been looking at in the research. It's called Verisol, and it's made by a company called Galita. I believe they're out of France. Not that that really matters. But I'm curious to see. They have some interesting double-blind studies on their type of collagen. It's like a collagen peptides. So I'm in the process of being a guinea pig of sorts and seeing if taking this supplement for what kind of results I get at the 1 month mark, the 2 month mark, and then finally at 3 months, because the container that I bought gives me 3 months worth of the supplement. You have to take 3 big pills, fairly big, every day, preferably with a meal. So I've just started popping those in the morning after I have breakfast. But I'll let you guys know. No adverse effects so far. I kind of wasn't anticipating any, but I'll keep you posted. From what I've seen, though, in the research, and from what I just told you, clearly I think collagen supplements are at least worth trying, and there's a lot of them out there. So just make sure you're buying from a reputable manufacturer that's been around, for a while. Maybe not. Paula's Choice is new to the supplement world, but we've been looking at and following these ingredients for quite some time, and did not include anything in our supplement that I would consider unsafe or questionable or, a little iffy. We really wanted to make sure that there was a lot of safety behind it, and I think we succeeded. So let me know what you think of the supplement, though. Valerie says, Bryan, I love when you do these chats. When in my routine should I use vitamin C, BHA, and AHA? Well, hello, Valerie. Some people love using AHA and BHA. I'm one of them. I don't put them on typically. I did last night, but I typically don't put them on one on top of the other. I alternate. I exfoliate once a day at night after cleansing and toning. And like on Monday, I'll use my AHA. On Tuesday, I'll use my BHA. And then I kind of just seesaw back and forth like that through the week. Every so often, I'll jump up to one of our higher strength exfoliants, like the 10% AHA serum type product we have, the Advanced Smoothing Treatment and Resist, or I'll use the Advanced Pore Refining Treatment, which is 4% BHA. But again, I typically do not layer them at the same time. You don't need AHA and BHA, but there's nothing wrong with experimenting with those as I did. And I personally have found that combination works great for me versus just using one of them long term. That isn't true for everyone. It's why we encourage you to experiment. And then in terms of the vitamin C product, that would go on afterwards. And then from past the exfoliant step, you layer everything else by thinnest to thickest texture. If all of the products in your routine that follow tend to have the same type of texture, like let's say everything else is either a gel or a liquid, in that instance, then you layer based on personal preference. But like for example, our hyaluronic acid booster is thicker. It's more of a gel, whereas our C15 super booster is a thin liquid. If you like putting the hyaluronic acid booster on first and following with C15, you find that combination works great, keep doing it. There's nothing in the hyaluronic acid serum that's going to stop the vitamin C ingredients from getting to where they need to be because the textures are so close. Okay, a few more questions here going over on purpose, but hello, have you heard, this is from Workin' Mom 2. WKRP. Hello, I heard you say mineral body SPF from PC is unlikely. Yes, that is true. We do love the texture of the extra care non-greasy. Can you briefly give the scientific take on the FDA reevaluating chemical SPF? I don't know how quick I can be about it, but essentially, the FDA has asked sunscreen manufacturers of the so-called synthetic actives, the octisalate, octinoxate, avobenzone, oxybenzone, and on. There's 12 or so of them. The FDA has asked for additional data to further confirm the ingredient's safety. One of the issues I think that study had that caused this big uproar is that one, the sample size was small. Two, they put more sunscreen over a larger surface area of the body than I think the average person would do on a daily basis. Our advice of late, even before this study, has always been that being sun smart isn't just sunscreen alone. It's sunscreen, protective clothing, hats, sunglasses, avoiding the sun, when it's at its peak intensity, seeking shade when it's, whenever you can when you're outside. I mean, don't go to the beach and lay out like this with your SPF 30 on and no other protective measures and think, but I've got sunscreen, I'm good. Because even the best sunscreens aren't filtering 100% of those rays. So it's like thinking that a healthy diet is about just eating greens and you avoid everything else because, well, greens are good for you. Well, yes, that's true, but you need other things to complete the nutritional picture. So yeah, I think that they're going to be doing more studies. My strong sense is that these ingredients their safety will be confirmed. At Paula's Choice, we're not panicking about them. We're of course discussing consumer perception because unfortunately, when negative press about ingredients gets out and it's propagated in the media, and even down the road, if definitive information comes out, parabens would be a great example. If definitive information comes out that they are in fact safe, often it's too difficult or too late to change the consumer's mind. They have it in their heads that ingredient or group of ingredients is a problem, and you've got lots of brands that are all too happy to reinforce that. We're paraben free. It is right there in big block letters on the product. That's an uphill battle and so rather than constantly having that debate with customers, because ultimately we want you to love our products and we want you to use our products and feel comfortable and confident using them. So rather than have that debate of, well, why are you using these ingredients and these ingredients and there's this study, and it's often easier when it makes sense to do so, to replace those ingredients with something else. The irony, nobody ever talks about this, is that oftentimes the replacements for the ingredients don't have, again, the parabens were perfect examples of what I'm talking about, because they had a long track record of safe use in cosmetics and, in fact, in many foods. And they occur naturally in certain foods that a lot of people wouldn't think twice about eating, like berries. They're part of the berries' natural defense system. And that rarely gets discussed in scare articles about parabens and skincare. But my point is that when everyone started pulling parabens out of their products, the alternatives that we had that could come close to or match the broad spectrum efficacy, so not just active against like gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria, did it have antifungal properties, what other kinds of microbes can I help control in a water-based cosmetic product? And we had information showing that these ingredients work. They passed what's called a preservative challenge test. But what we didn't have, that we did with parabens, was safety data that said, the ingredients were so new that there really wasn't a whole lot to go on in terms of, any sort of a history of safe use. So you had all these brands that were using these alternative preservatives, and there was a lot of consumers that had sensitized reactions to these new formulations with these new preservatives because they were fairly untested. But there was such a demand based on, sadly, on misinformation or misunderstanding of the information that for a while, now we've got some good data, but for a while we were the guinea pigs. That's why Paula's Choice didn't dump out of parabens right away. It was a slow process. We were looking at the research as it was evolving. We were really careful in choosing the best paraben-free systems we could based on what was available at the time. And anyway, a little bit of a tangent there. And I'm not even recalling what the original question was about the sunscreen actives. So yeah, and I'm really happy there to see in all of those, even in the research itself, and information from the FDA, they're not saying don't use sunscreen or be afraid of sunscreen. Having said that, I do think as a general guideline that the mineral sunscreens just tend to be they're not always as aesthetically pleasing, but they tend to be the better choice in terms of less worry. I can point you to studies that show the mineral sunscreen actives can cause certain issues under these conditions, but as used in skincare products and in sunscreens, they're fine. And they stay where they need to be. Lizelle is asking, I don't want to skip Maria's question. We'll get to Maria and Lizelle. Maria says, hi, you didn't get to my question last time. Aha, see? I must have like this thing where I'm just like, skip Maria. But no, that's not the case. Can the clear oil-free moisturizer prevent signs of aging with ingredients like ceramides? How is this different than the clear skin anti-aging hydrator? So the clear oil-free moisturizer does contain some anti-aging ingredients, including niacinamide and some soothing plant extracts, which not only have an anti-redness effect, which can help acne-prone skin, but the anti-inflammatory benefit they deliver. Anything you can do topically or internally, for that matter, to reduce inflammation is going to help skin look and act younger and healthier. The anti-aging clear skin hydrator, I would say it has a more targeted blend of anti-aging ingredients. We try not to segment our skincare collections by age because we remain steadfast that age isn't a skin type. Skin type is a skin type. Just because you're 35 doesn't mean that you won't have a breakout. Just because you're in your 50s doesn't mean you can't have oily skin or problems with clogged pores. Just because you're in your 60s or even in your 20s doesn't mean that you will or won't have dry skin. There's so many variables. So, but when we have to be aware of who the target audience is for our products, particularly with a line our size. And the Resist Anti-Aging Clear Skin Hydrator was somebody who's younger, a teenager, for example, can certainly use it. No harm in using it when you're younger. But in terms of its formulary, its amount of vitamin C and niacinamide, some of the other anti-aging ingredients in that formula, I believe that one has the EGCG from green tea, I'd have to double check. It's been a while since I've looked at that formula, but it's a cool one. And anyway, that was formulated more with with a person in their 30s to mid 40s, early 50s in mind, who's dealing with signs of aging that are more common at that age, based on typical environmental exposure and lifestyle, and then what they would need to help improve those issues. Whereas the clear oil-free moisturizer, yes, it contains some anti-aging ingredients. We could legitimately say this is anti-aging, but it was really formulated for a younger person who is dealing with breakouts and wants something very light, whether just because they need some moisturizer, some hydration, or because they're using topical anti-acne products that are doing a number on their skin in terms of dryness and flaking. I remember years ago when that was me and I was using Retin-A and it was just tearing up my skin. And I was 14, 15, I was using it for acne. It was really difficult to find a gentle, soothing moisturizer that was not going to make my acne worse. I didn't want to solve one problem and create another, and so that's what we kept in mind with the clear oil-free moisturizer, and for that matter, the anti-aging clear skin hydrator, because for a person in their 30s, 40s, early 50s who's dealing with breakouts, clogged pores, and large pores, they don't want to put anything heavy or occlusive on their skin either. There's that concern that they want those extra anti-aging ingredients, but they don't want to make their clogged pores and breakouts worse. And they're concerned that if they use the typical acne products, that those are going to dry out to their skin. They won't give them the hydration they need. And based on a lot of the formulas out there, I think that's a very legitimate concern. So I hope I answered your question, Maria, and I'm glad that I didn't skip over you. I apologize for missing it last time. But come back for the chats if you have more questions. And let me take 2 more questions. Lizelle says, is bismuth oxychloride an ingredient to avoid? I mean, not outright. I think with a lot, it can be drying. It's a mineral pigment type ingredient, like the iron oxide, that can give some opacity to products. It is often used because, like mica, which is another mineral pigment, bismuth oxychloride can give some luster or luminosity to products. There was some concern a while ago that as that mineral is broken down in the process of creating bismuth oxychloride, the shape of the ingredient, it can kind of, what's the best? It can poke at the skin. So, for example, you're using a product, and bismuth oxychloride was a big ingredient in a lot of the loose mineral makeups that were popular in the early 2000s. Some of them are still out there, but you're not seeing nearly as much emphasis on mineral makeup as you were back then. And some people were complaining that when they put those powders on the skin, they're working them in with their sponge or their brush, that it would almost feel kind of prickly. And I'm almost certain that that is due to the natural shape of the bismuth oxychloride ingredient, and it just had some pokey edges. That I think they've worked out some of those tweaks over the years. I'm hoping so, because I don't see that complaint as much. But generally, I don't mind it as an ingredient. But if I was shopping for a powder, I still might shy away if I saw that was like the second or third ingredient on the list. Sometimes it's listed as a may contain, which is fine. Chances are there's just tiny amounts, and it's used either to add some luster or luminosity, as I mentioned, or even to help adjust the shade. Different reasons for using it. Okay, Rogers Park Irish Coffee. That's an interesting name. Hi, Bryan. Could you provide some insights regarding the price point for the niacinamide booster? There are several good 10% niacinamide serums with price points around $10. The size of these niacinamide serums appear to be very similar. Certainly differentiators you can point out are appreciated. Cosd, Baja, and so Cos DNA. So yes, there are less expensive niacinamide products. So this is a tricky question to answer. I know, because I can only speak to our formula, and what the cost of the ingredients are, and the amounts that we use. And of course, I can't just sit here and spout off the entire formula. There's some aspects that have to stay proprietary for obvious reasons, but it's difficult because I don't have a window into what these other brands are doing behind the scenes. In some cases, for some of the less expensive niacinamide products that I've seen, they're not using the same caliber of partner ingredients. So you'll often just get, it's water, niacinamide, a thickening agent or two, some preservatives, and maybe a little bit of sodium hyaluronate or a plant extract. And ours has the 10% niacinamide. It's in a special solution that helps the niacinamide stay suspended and solubilized in the formula, which means that you're getting a uniform amount of niacinamide throughout the product, and it's going to spread on skin evenly. We've got the genistein, which is a soy-derived antioxidant. That's a very expensive ingredient. Ascorbyl glucoside, the acetylglucosamine is in there. There's phospholipids to help replenish skin's barrier. I mean, the simple short answer is that I think we're using more ingredients than what some of the competitors with niacinamide are using, and we're using them at a higher level, and those that we are selecting just happen to cost more. What's interesting about the niacinamide booster is I've seen reviews from quite a few people that have tried the other products on the market, not all of them, but let's say maybe two, that have the same amount of niacinamide, and they're like, well, yeah, yours is kind of expensive. I'm going to try this one, because really I just want the benefit from the niacinamide. And I get it. Try that product. But what's interesting is how many times I've read, I tried it, and it just didn't seem to work as well. And I ended up going back to yours, and I got my skin back to where it was when I was enjoying yours. So I'll close by saying, we do our best to be price sensitive and to remain competitive in the marketplace. We're certainly never going to be, La Mer pricing or La Prairie or any of those, which I could go on for days about some of the issues there, but I can assure you that we keep all of that in mind, and it is our goal to deliver the most cost-effective product to you without compromising what makes Paula's Choice so distinctive and what we want the product to do, what we want you to see and experience from using it. That's really the long and the short of it. So I hope that, if you have found that one of the less expensive niacinamide products works really well for you, then that's great. I wouldn't say, come back to us just on principle. And as the consumer, you get to decide. But I hope that if you're using a niacinamide product that is from one of the less expensive brands, and it's a bit more of a bare bones formula, that other products in your routine, other leave-on products, are picking up, not necessarily picking up the slack, but that you have at least one or two other leave-on products in your routine that are giving your skin more robust amounts of a broad array of ingredients along with the niacinamide. Because at any concentration, whether it's niacinamide, vitamin C, retinol, hyaluronic acid, peptides, on and on and on, skincare isn't as simple as just one ingredient, even the best ones. So I will leave you with that. And I think we really kind of managed, we went over an hour. Perfect. I apologize again for the delay. Hopefully it won't happen next week. Fingers crossed. I thought I was so there with this technology. Everything else worked fine. But yes, I'll be back next week to speak with you again. And if I didn't get to your questions, please join us next week, and we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.